Thanks, Stuart. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Boyd from Telstra. I'm having a pretty interesting day today. I have found so far what I've learned of enormous value. I didn't realise there was actually so many projects and activities going on across the region. It's a little bit about Telstra. I'm an area manager, so there's two of us in WA. So there's one that does WA North, and I look after WA South and Central. So I'm based down in Bunbury, and my area goes Kalgoorlie, Esperance, Albany, that lower Wheatbelt portion. So I'm not familiar with all of the Wheatbelt, but certainly that lower part of the Wheatbelt, but I'll try and cover it all off in a few things I'd like to go through today. I want to talk a little bit about Telstra in terms of investment and where we're going in the future. Try and talk about mobile and wireless, and I'll talk a little bit about fixed, and then I'll talk about investment strategies and things going forward. Okay, in terms of mobile coverage broadly, we're in a pretty good spot. We've got 2.3 million square kilometres of the landmass covered, which is good, and it reaches a lot of the population, but if I've done the numbers right, that's still only about just under a third of the total landmass which is covered via the mobile network. So is it possible to cover the whole lot? Sadly, no. And obviously there's a propensity to put the sites around the seaboard, and that's how it is at the moment. But having said that, in terms of our coverage, we've got coverage into 600 towns and communities, 7,500 k's of highway, and 4,500 k's of railway, which is not covered by other networks. So it's good. There's still work to go, and I'll talk a little bit more about investment and things we have been doing. More recently, we've been focusing a lot on the 4G network. So for those of you, everybody here's got a smartphone, you'd all be familiar with 4G. I was getting at pretty good speeds out there before myself, so 4G's alive and well in Northam, which is good. And we'll continue the rollout of the 4G network to upgrade our existing 3G sites. So broadly around the country, there's nearly 8,000 sites. As we introduce any new infrastructure to the network, we go backwards, and we make sure that everything's updated so it's all got the latest and greatest technology moving forward. Sadly, I don't have the graph with the moving dots. I love that one. This one's a little bit static, but this is looking at the Wheatbelt. Now, these are the current mobile tower locations. And you can see broadly there's a pretty good spread. As I said before, would like to do more in the coverage space, and I will touch on a few more things. But the green lines that you can see where the mobile towers by and large are sitting on top of, that's illustrating the fibre network. So in the case of the mobile towers that we're talking about, by and large most of them are connected to the fibre network, and I'll speak about that a little bit further. I'd like to touch on a program which is sort of near and dear to our heart, which is the RMCP, the Regional Mobile Communication Project, which was a joint initiative through the Royalties for Regions funding, the state government, and working with the Department of Commerce. It enabled Telstra to successfully roll out 113 mobile towers, additional mobile sites. Now, these were into areas that had no coverage. So you can see, well, hopefully you can see on the map there, the purple splodges, technical term. They're the tower locations, and you'll see if you follow the purple splodges around, it's pretty good highway coverage. So that was a big focus in the first round of the RMCP project. And you can see there they're broken up by the Development Commission areas. So you can see the purple spots there in the Wheatbelt. There was a few, and for me, sort of further down in the region, south and southwest, there was a few, but most of the sites did finish, as you can see there, north of the state. I would like to hope that moving forward we can progress along with the next iteration of the program. There is now the federal funding federal government black spot funding program, which was the 100 million nationally, and there's also the money set aside in the state government toward the coverage program. That'll go to tender, and touch wood, we may have a chance at progressing with a further rollout of the network, which will give us a great opportunity to expand and build on the sites that we've done so far. We have mapped, and I know through local shires and the Development Commission have done an amazing job, and particularly here for the Wheatbelt, and I think there's something like another nearing 100 sites earmarked for the region, which would be fabulous. We'll just have to see how all the financial constraints impact that and what is actually feasible at the end of the day. Coming back to the current program, so my green dots again, you'll see the little red ones in there. They're the sites that were added through the first phase of the RMCP program. So I didn't count them up, but there's I think 7 or 8 of them. And for any of you that are living or working around those, you'd probably be quite familiar when they switched on, because it was a significant moment in bringing coverage where it didn't exist previously. There's just a couple of happy snaps. I thought that was relevant because there's a couple of articles that were really pertinent, like the one at the top where it says first time coverage and phone towers open whole new world. There's a picture of Terry Redmond, so I thought I'd do a bit of sucking up, but I don't think he's here. So, yeah, down the bottom there when we're at Mumble Up, Condinin. Now, what's behind our mobile network? So as I was touching on before with the fibre, those green lines on the earlier map, that we're connected via Ethernet backhaul, which means that we've got really good capacity in the mobile network going forward, the fibre enables us to deal with the capacity and the growing demand for capacity that we need on the network. Conversely, some of the other networks use a point-to-point radio Ethernet, so it doesn't have the same sort of capacity as the fibre network does. So whilst you can't see it because it's all underground, it's there, and that's a really strong part behind our mobile network. We aspire to have Australia's best mobile network. It says there we've spent $4.5 billion on the mobile network to date, and we continue to invest heavily in that. In the last few years, we've spent $1 billion per annum on the network, and that's really key to making sure that we are keeping up with capacity and strengthening and building the network. The bit in the middle says the focus in 2014 and in 15 is talking about carrier aggregation, and what I'm talking about there is adding spectrum, so the 700 megahertz spectrum into our network. Now that's the spectrum. You remember the analogue TV before that network got switched off. That's what that ran on. So that went to auction, was it last year? And we spent $1.3 billion on a good chunk of that spectrum. So what that means is we'll be able to add the 700 megahertz spectrum to the mobile tower, if you like, so it'll transmit that frequency, which means we'll have much faster speed capability going forward than exists on the network today. I'll come back to that in just a sec, but just touch on a couple of other things. We do have a pretty good program around sporting events and where we would put in mobile cells. So we have we call it a cow, a cell on wheels, which we would take around, and if we need that at an agricultural event or if we need it at a particular function, we can take the trailer there, set the tower up, and we can bring some additional coverage. And we do that where we've got fire and emergency type of events. I remember when we had the Margaret River fires, we deployed a cell, but we didn't actually need it in the end because we were okay from coverage. But we would bring that to a site, connect it to the fibre, and then broaden our coverage. Now, in the case of, say, I know it's a bit away from here, but if I was talking about Albany with the Anzac commemorations coming up later this year, we can't actually use the cell in that situation because we've got really good coverage of mobile towers, and it won't work in the middle. It actually causes a bit of interference with the other sites. So it's not always necessarily the right answer, but where we can use it, we will deploy. We're hoping too, we've got the ability to use the 700 megahertz frequency early, so we're going to deploy that down into Albany, which just means there's a couple of handsets at the moment that'll work on the 700 meg frequency, and it'll just mean that users will be using that rather than the 4G, which then frees up the 3G. So hopefully, again, touch wood, hopefully we've got enough capacity at that event to deal with the 60 or 70 or 80,000 people that are going to turn up. Like I've been hearing about grain and everything else, there just seems to be an explosion around capacity, and we're no different. Everybody's using data. It's not about telephony, it hasn't been for a long time. That's the simple stuff, making a call. It's the bandwidth that we need to be able to carry the data, all the social media, the files, businesses, all the stuff that you need to do. And you're all familiar with that with your tablets and your devices. More than half, well, it says more than half of Australians own a smartphone, and practically all the ones that are coming out now are 4G enabled, as you'd be aware. This is looks a little messy, but if you just look down the bottom, where it says today, if you look upward, where it says up to 150 megabits per second. Now that's sort of where we sit at the moment, so that's the 4G network. Now in real terms, I know this is really interesting stuff, that's about 40 to 50 meg download speed. That's what you can get on your 4G device. What we're saying moving forward, and when we add the 700 megahertz in, talking around the 100 meg. So just for those of you that are interested, that's along the lines of the same sort of speed that you'd be getting with the NBN through the fibre network. So that's pretty, I think the technical term is bloody fast. And that'll be what you'll be getting different devices, and that's what's sort of coming in the future for the mobile network. Carrier aggregation, look, I'll try not to bore you to tears because I'm sensing some people glazing over. So what that means is, and it says there we're going to glue bands of spectrum together, what it means is we're just going to have more spectrum so that we can use the different frequencies. So the little tower illustration on the left, it's got 1800, which was what we got on the 3G, and then it's got the 700. So with the devices, they can all use a bit of each. So if I look at this one with showing the actual handsets, if you look at the category 3 and category 4, the ones on the left, that's the ones that are available today. They're 15 and 20 megahertz devices. Now, each bit of spectrum needs 5 megahertz. So on the category 4, the 20, it'll hold 4. So if you look forward, the devices that are going to be coming out in the category 9, which will come out in a couple of years' time, that'll be able to hold 60 meg. So heaps of carrier. So we'll be able to have potentially even faster speeds. So amazing stuff coming. Now, the illustration's not saying that the devices are all going to get big again. Well, they already have. That's just showing you what's happening for the future in terms of where the devices are going. I wanted to put up the balloons because I did go balloon riding when I was here a few months back, and it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. But this is all about Wi-Fi network. We did mention a few months back that we were launching a Wi-Fi network which is going to kick off from 2015. Really, there's two elements to it. One is the current gateway modem, the box that sits in a business or at home. We're going to have a new one of those, and it's kind of compartmentalised. So half for you at home or at work, the other half enable for Wi-Fi. So if I'm out the front of your business, I can then access a portion of that modem device back to my Wi-Fi device, and I can then leverage it off my home data allowance, if that makes sense. So I'm not having then to use my mobile broadband allowance. I can use it back to my Wi-Fi. I can Wi-Fi back to my home plan. We're also in the process of establishing more than 8,000 Wi-Fi hotspots across the country. So that's where we work with shires and areas and transit and sort of figure out the best places to position these hotspots. And that's a really big thing. I know for a lot of towns and shires, they're all wanting to push along community Wi-Fi, a really strong point. So we're definitely on board with this. It'll give us the ability going forward to have something like 2 million hotspots across the country, and internationally there'll be a bunch as well. So that's very exciting. Looking forward to that program kicking off next year. Telstra Smart Antenna. I just wanted to touch on boosters and antennas just quickly. I put the nasty ones down the bottom with the little circle around them. They're the illegal ones that you can buy off the net, and some people buy these, sadly, to boost their mobile signal where they've got dodgy coverage. They're not great because they actually emit their own frequency, and I think the technical term is bugger up the network for us, which is quite concerning. So we don't like those, but the one above, there is actually an authorised version. So look, if you think about things like the iPhones, and I can see a few on the tables there, not many of the phones now have the RF port. You remember going back a few years, we all connected them and we put them in the car and we had the cradle and all that sort of stuff. Now we just want to grab everything out of our pocket and just use it straight away. without any external antenna or anything else. It'd be nice if we could just kind of have a think about that. Please visit coverage maps, which with whoever provider you're with, it'll show you where you've got handheld coverage and it'll show you where it's external antenna required, or when you can use one of these devices in your home to broadcast the signal for you. You can still get passive cradles and things that will work with the current devices, so it's worth having a think. If you're challenged, or talk to me later, I'll sell you some out of the boot of the car. Okay, so enough with mobiles. I get into ADSL. So the copper network, it's still alive and well. In terms of relief proposed, so you can see there, this is straight off our wholesale website, so anyone can go to this report. And that's saying there that Brookton, Corrigin and Merredin will all get an upgrade by 31st of October 14. Thank God, because there's no ports there available at the moment in any of those 3 locations. So pleased that we've got the upgrade coming there. I just pulled out the ones where we'd had an upgrade in the last 12 months. So that's just giving you a quick snapshot. There's been a couple of upgrades in Northam. Now this will be a mixture of speed, so the backhaul, or ports where we've had limited capacity. The point I wanted to make around ports and ADSL, we still are challenged in some areas. Some people will live too far away from an exchange to get ADSL. Some exchanges require an upgrade, and we're kind of thinking we want to invest over here. But if anybody, any shire, any area wants to come and talk to us and say, let's have a look at this, what's it going to cost to put some more infrastructure in, we'd be really, really, really happy to sit down and do that and work out a plan. Similarly, and it just came back into my head, somebody before mentioned around mobile networks and the lack of coverage and so forth. Anybody can invest in a mobile tower. A lot of the mining sites do that. So anything's possible. It's just about, how we fund all this sort of stuff and how we'd like to do it. NBN, I'd like to touch on NBN. There isn't actually a lot going on in the Wheatbelt, which is probably no surprise to anybody. The little brown, so that's where we are now, the little orange one, and the little brown ones there are showing where fixed wireless sites are under construction. So we know what fixed wireless NBN is. That's where they build a mobile tower. It looks no different really to a phone tower, and then you'll have 200 to 300 homes connected to that via a dish on the roof, kind of like a Foxtel, and that'll then connect them to the to the fixed wireless tower. So the good news is there's there's half a dozen of those in the region under construction. At this stage, there's no plan. You can't see anything on the website around where the cable network is at, so that's still a bit shrouded in mystery, but there's some work happening. So you can see if you just go a bit left across to the coast, you can see heaps of active, so there's a lot going on there in areas of Perth, but it will, look, the NBN journey will make its way across. It's just obviously going to take a bit of time. Wrapping up. Okay, just a couple left. Nice picture of Shane from the ANZ there in the middle. The NBN, when we do get to the point of the NBN fixed wireless, we've got a nice little van. We'll drive out, we'll talk to people, we'll demonstrate the devices, we'll do the checks and all that sort of stuff. So happy to help. E-health, this is my last slide. I just wanted to quickly mention, and we talked a little bit before about telehealth. Certainly from a Telstra perspective, big investment next year and now in the e-health project. There's currently something like 100 million per annum repeat prescriptions done, which are done by patient going into the doctors and getting the repeat prescription done. That could be done online. Similarly, there's 135 million doctors' visits each year. At the moment, there's only 20,000 video conference appointments done. So there's huge scope. If you think about in the US, they've got something like 15 or 20% happening online. So there's a huge scope for us to be in that space, developing programs. We've got a whole health sector set up at Telstra now, and I'm really excited. I only heard about this a couple of weeks ago at a conference I attended, and this is going to be a really big program for us moving forward. That's it for me. I hope that was interesting, and thank you very much.